Bold Predictions, Chapter 28. We have gotten almost to 30. There's nothing stopping us now, except the season at some point getting in our way. Let's start with one of our good, close, dear friends, Dave Bartow, or as you may know him on Twitter, at CFB Matrix. He said, I wouldn't say this is bold. Uncle Dave, we will decide how bold this is. You just give us your prediction. He said, my favorite three in the preseason top 25 to not be there at the end of the season are Pitt, Cincinnati, and Ole Miss. What do we think about this? I put a 9 flat on the boldness scale of 1 to 10. You could sell me, you could give me a plausible scenario where any one of these three teams finish the season outside the top 25. It could happen. Cincinnati's a G5 team, so normally if they lose 3 games, they'll be out of the top 25. Ole Miss, Pitt probably need 4 losses. Maybe, I don't know, it just depends on how the rest of the country shakes out. So you could sell me on one of them. But 3 of them, all 3 of these, and these are solid reputations they have, I'm not so sure that's happening. And also, keep in mind what you need. You don't just need them to fall. You need the right confluence of events around them to transpire for them to all 3 be outside the top 25. It's a great big difference when you say top 15 versus top 25. You start getting into some 3 and 4 loss minutia when you get into the 20 to 25 range. So Cincinnati, over-under preseason win total, 9.5. That's the G5 team in this group. They're too well coached. They're too well constructed, even if they are off this year. Look at their schedule. They go to Arkansas week 1. We may very well be there on the Every Given Saturday tour in Fayetteville. You know I got to get there at some point this year. They're a 7-point dog in that game. Maybe they'll lose it. Let's say for argument's sake they do. Guys, the rest of the way is very favorable for them. And they'll be favored most of, if not the entirety, of the rest of the season. So they got to drop multiple additional games. I don't see all 3 of them. I got to have all 3 of them happen. It's not happening. Ole Miss, maybe. Individually, in a vacuum, I told you the other night, if I had to take an under in the West, it would be Ole Miss. I would take under 7.5 wins. But look, and then we get into the power rating world. Even if Ole Miss is 7-5 this year, which would be under the 7.5 preseason win total, just because of the division they play in, they may still be a top 25 power rated team. Now, they'll probably be out of the AP top 25. I don't see all 3 of these teams being outside the top 25. So I'm going to go with a 9 on the boldness scale. Next up, this one got an 8 from me. Clark said there is going to be an SEC team not named Bama or Georgia in the college football playoff this year. Now, odds makers would clearly tell you this is going to be Texas A&M. If it's not Bama and Georgia, it would be Texas A&M. Their preseason over-under win total is 8.5. By comparison, Georgia and Bama both have 11 as their preseason over-under win total. The perception out there, which I think is reality, is you have 2 prime candidates, just as you did a year ago. You got Tide, you got Dogs, then you got a gap, and then you got maybe 1 or 2 teams. Maybe A&M and Tennessee are kind of floating there, but Jesse is showing you right now, well, Jesse prepared it, Director Colin punched it, but he's showing you the preseason national title odds on the screen. Here's how that sounds for those of you on podcast. Alabama, plus 180. Now that's to win the whole thing. Georgia plus 425. Do you know who the next closest team in the SEC is when it comes to national title odds? That would be A&M, and they are at plus 2,500. And then it's LSU at plus 5,000. So there's a steep, and I mean a precipitous drop-off, if you will, after the first 2 there. Anyway, the prediction was someone not named Bama and Georgia from the SEC will be in the playoff. To me, that's Texas A&M. And to me, that is an 8 on the boldness scale. Quarterback play, quarterback play, quarterback play. I had someone going at it with me the other day on Twitter, and they said, what is A&M? It was today, actually. They said, what is A&M really going to do this year? What are they really capable of? And I said, well, if they have plus-level quarterback play, they're capable of making the playoff. Now, I get how big a mouthful that is. We just told the whole story of A&M football, didn't we, over the last couple of years under Jimbo? You got really good and steadily improving depth across the board, vastly improved defensive football team. They've, at various times, had some of the best offensive lines in college football out there, but they have not been able to stretch the field on you. That's the long and short of it. It's so easy to say. It's so hard to rectify. I was talking to someone last week, and they said, you know what's funny is while everyone, even the most stubborn coaches in America, have evolved offensively, Jimbo still does the same thing. And I said, well, yeah. And they said, no, but do you really get what I said? And I said, well, continue. If you're not done talking, continue. And they said, watch how many pre-snap shifting and motioning there is in the A&M offense. And the answer is virtually nil. He doesn't believe he needs to do it. He believes that if everything on this play sheet here is executed just how I drew it up, we don't need all that. We don't need the window dress. And he's technically right. The problem is you don't have 11 robots on the field. You got 11 living, breathing humans that were born less than 20 years ago in most cases. So sometimes you need some margin for error, and there's not a lot of it baked into Jimbo's offense. Well, if we get better quarterback play this year, the point is A&M would be that team. I do not necessarily foresee this being the year that someone not named Bama or Georgia breaks through here. So I'm going to say it's an 8. I'm going to say it's an 8 that a team not named Bama or Georgia goes to the playoff from the SEC. This next one is, on the surface it looks really bold, but then you dive in and it's not that bold. So DJ said Utah will be the only Power 5 team to repeat as a conference champion, and they'll make it to the playoff. Now, out of the interest of fairness, I'm just going to acknowledge the first part here. They'll be the only team to repeat as a conference champ. Quick reset. Who were your conference champs at Power 5 level last year? Pitt won the ACC. Baylor won the Big 12. Michigan won the Big 10. Utah, the aforementioned Utes, they won the Pac-12. And Alabama won the SEC. If you're not careful, you'll convince yourself Georgia won the SEC last year. No, they won the rematch in the national title game. You got Nick Saban and Bama as your SEC champ. I think this is like a 6 on the boldness scale. This is a situation where if we go down the list right quick, to give you an idea, and to rephrase here, the prediction is Utah is the only team that won a conference title last year that's going to repeat as conference champ this year. Utah is a co-favorite to win the Pac-12. They are plus 210 co-favorites with USC, okay? In the ACC, last year's champ, Pitt, they are not your favorite. In fact, they are they are tied for third in the odds. Clemson is a minus 120 favorite. Then it's Miami plus 500. Then NC State and Pitt are plus 800. So they're not expected to win the thing. Expectation doesn't mean a whole lot once we kick it off. But just to give you an idea of where Vegas stacks these teams up. What about the Big 12? Where is Baylor? We've talked about Baylor a considerable amount over the past week. Baylor is 4th odds-on favorite to win the Big 12 at plus 650. By comparison, Oklahoma, Texas, plus 220 co-favorites. Next up in the Big 10, Michigan is your champ from last year. They're well behind Ohio State in terms of odds. Ohio State a minus 250 favorite, and Michigan's next, and they're plus 750. So a very sizable gap perceptionally in the odds market between Ohio State and Michigan. And then you got Bama. This is where you're going to run into a little bit of a problem, because Bama is a pretty big favorite to win the SEC. They're minus 140. Georgia's next at plus 140. It is widely assumed in the odds-making community they will play again for the SEC championship. So you can sell me on Pitt and Baylor and Michigan not winning their conferences again, and Utah does win the Pac-12, but you still got the Bama factor to deal with, and Alabama, as of today, would be my pick to win the SEC. So because of that, I made this a 6 on the boldness scale because Georgia's still going to have a really good team this year. And you could have something really crazy happen and Bama don't play for the SEC or Bama doesn't play for the SEC title. It would be unlikely. So I made that a 6 on the boldness scale. Next up, we had to do some digging on this one. There will be 0 undefeated teams at the end of the regular season. Now we're talking about regular season here. If we were talking about the full season, which counts conference titles and playoffs and bowl season, it's fairly uncommon, but it's not unheard of to have 0 undefeateds at the end of the entire season. 2021, last year, we did not have an undefeated at the very end. 2014, 15, and 16 we did. In 2011 we didn't. So it still happens, but it's a little more rare. But just the regular season, this is very bold to say we're going to have no undefeateds, because I'm going to put this at an 8.75. We have undefeateds all the time at the end of the regular season. In fact, Jesse's showing you right now, we had 2 of them last year. We had 3 in 2019, 4 in 2018, 2 in 2017. So most years we have multiples. And we excluded the 2020 year just because it was lopsided due to COVID. So, I mean, we had some that year too. Point being, if you look at the highest win totals in college football this year, we have 3 teams at 11. That's Bama, Georgia, Ohio State. We have Clemson at 10.5. Someone's going undefeated in the regular season. Now, the good news, I guess, for the prediction is there is no slam dunk G5 team. There's no G5 team this year where you look and you say, who's going to stop them? Houston, Central Florida, Cincinnati, who's going to stop them? They're a virtual lock to go undefeated. We'll just see how wide the scoring margins are. There's not that team this year, but even having said that, Ohio State, and if not them, Bama, if not them, Georgia, if Clemson, someone's going undefeated in the regular season. So I made that one an 8.75. Last one here, this hits close to home. Morgan said, the Every Given Saturday Tour will make a stop in Columbia, Missouri for 4-0 Missouri versus Georgia in Week 5. For those unfamiliar, this is what we do. We, and it's me really, every Saturday in the fall, I just go to whichever game I want to, and we call it something. This year we call it the Every Given Saturday Tour. Last year it was the Renaissance Tour. And we get to choose where we go, and we're looking to go to the biggest game. We're looking to see as many teams as possible. We're looking to be in the best environment on a Saturday. And so you may look at this suggestion like I do and say, what? Georgia, Missouri is going to be that game, Week 5? Well, this is a 9.5 for a reason. I don't think I'm going to be in Columbia, Missouri in Week 5. We got Bama at Arkansas that day. And if Arkansas has already lost some games and it's not as attractive, you know what else we got that day? Michigan at Iowa. I have never been to a game at Iowa. Went to Iowa State last year. Never been to a game at Iowa. Michigan's going to be undefeated that afternoon. If Iowa gets past Iowa State, I believe Iowa's probably going to be undefeated that afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, we'd probably be there if that was the case. LSU's at Auburn. Both of those teams could be undefeated that afternoon. Oklahoma State at Baylor, as I said the other night, is the sneakiest game in the early portion of the season, period. That's that afternoon. OU is at TCU that afternoon. So NC State's at Clemson that afternoon. I overlooked that in my notes. So the reason I'm so emphatic there is because I'm telling you, we're probably not going to be at Missouri. That's a 9.5 at least. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and bump it up. That's a 9.75. Now, whether Missouri will be 4-0, what have they had to do? They got to go to Kansas State and win. Not easy at all. And they have to go to, you know what? I don't think Missouri's going to be undefeated by that point. If they are, we will hard golf clap for the Tigers on this show, but I still don't believe that we'll be at that game. Even if they're undefeated, you know how big Georgia would be favored in that game? And it's the same reason we're probably not going to Georgia versus Oregon Week 1. The line on the game is 17.5. So what we don't want is we don't want to be at a game on the Every Given Saturday Tour and be in the media suite at halftime and it's 31-3 and you're saying, why did we come to this one? That's what we want to avoid. We saw 4 field stormings last year. That's where we want to be.